They called her the Hollow Wolf. Born with silver eyes and no ability to shift, Mirren was the shame of Velmoran. For 23 years she had endured the whispers, the pity, and the disgust. But nothing had prepared her for the day Alpha King Corvain stood before his court and declared her worthless. He had stripped her of her rank, her home, and her dignity. Cast her into exile like refuse, while his new queen smiled from the throne that should have been Mirren's. Now she survived in the borderlands, forgotten by everyone who had once pretended to care. She had accepted her fate. She had stopped hoping. Then the rider came bearing the crimson banner of Astravar, the rival kingdom Velmoran had warred with for generations. And when Mirren saw who dismounted from the war horse, her blood turned to ice. Alpha King Calyx, the most powerful ruler on the continent, the man Corvain feared above all others. He had crossed enemy territory, risked war, and ridden for 3 weeks through treacherous lands, and he had done it all for one purpose: her. "I've been searching for you," he said, his amber eyes holding hers with an intensity that made her forget how to breathe. "The whole world calls you worthless, but I know what you really are." Mirren didn't understand. She couldn't understand. Not until he made his offer clear. He would take her to Astravar as his queen. He would give her everything Corvain had stolen. He would protect her with his dying breath. But he warned her of one thing. His kingdom was cursed, and the price of saving it might destroy them both. Neither of them knew how wrong he was. The curse wouldn't destroy them. It would forge them into something unstoppable. The borderlands were where you went when no one wanted you. And Mirren had learned, in the 7 months since her exile, that no one had ever wanted her at all. She crouched beside the half-frozen stream, scrubbing her only spare tunic against the rocks. Her fingers had gone numb hours ago, but she kept working. Stopping meant thinking. Thinking meant remembering. And remembering meant reliving the moment Corvain had looked at her with those cold gray eyes and spoken the words that ended her life. "You are defective, hollow. A wolf who cannot shift is no wolf at all. I, Alpha King Corvain of Velmoran, declare this woman unfit to serve as my mate. She is cast out, stripped of rank and title, banished to the borderlands until death claims her worthless bones." The court had erupted in whispers. Some had laughed. His new queen, the beautiful Solène, had smiled with such satisfaction that Mirren understood instantly. This had been planned. Every moment of the past year, every cold shoulder and cruel rumor, every time Corvain had looked at her with growing disgust. Solène had orchestrated it all, but understanding didn't change anything. Mirren had walked out of that hall with nothing. No possessions, no coin, no family willing to claim her. Her father had died years ago. Her mother had remarried into a pack that wanted nothing to do with a daughter who couldn't shift. She had been alone for so long that exile almost felt familiar. Almost. A branch snapped in the forest behind her. Mirren's head jerked up, her body going rigid. Wolves lived in these borderlands. Rogues, mostly. Criminals and outcasts who had been cast out of various packs. They were desperate and dangerous, and more than once she'd had to hide for days to avoid their hunting parties. But this sound was different. Hoofbeats. Multiple horses. The creak of leather and the clink of metal. Mirren abandoned her washing and scrambled up the rocky bank toward the tree line. Her shelter, if you could call it that, was a shallow cave half a mile north. If she could reach it before they spotted her. "Don't run!" The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, deep, commanding, resonant with an alpha presence so powerful that Mirren's legs locked beneath her. She couldn't move. She couldn't breathe. Slowly, fighting every instinct that screamed at her to flee, she turned. The rider emerged from the trees like something out of a nightmare. His horse was massive, black as midnight, breath steaming in the cold air. Behind him rode 6 more soldiers, all wearing armor that gleamed crimson in the pale winter light. But Mirren barely registered the soldiers. Her attention was fixed entirely on the man. He was tall, taller than Corvain, with shoulders broad enough to block out the sky. His hair was dark, falling in unruly waves past his jaw, and his eyes were the color of molten amber, burning with an intensity that made her want to look away and never stop looking all at once. She knew that banner, crimson and gold, the roaring lion, Astravar, the enemy kingdom, which meant this man could only be one person. Alpha King Calyx, Mirren breathed, the words coming out as vapor in the frozen air. He dismounted in one fluid motion, his boots hitting the snow-covered ground without sound. When he walked toward her, she noticed he moved like a predator, all controlled power and deliberate grace. He stopped 3 feet away, close enough that she could smell him. Pine and wood smoke, and something darker beneath. Something that made her hollow wolf stir restlessly in her chest for the first time in months. "You know who I am," he said. It wasn't a question. Mirren's chin lifted despite her terror. "Everyone knows who you are. The Alpha King of Astravar, the enemy of Velmoran, the man who killed Corvain's father in single combat." She paused. "Have you come to kill me? Because Corvain already took everything I had. There's nothing left worth claiming." Something flickered in those amber eyes. Not anger, not pity. Interest. "I haven't come to kill you," Calyx said slowly. "I've come to find you." "Find me?" Mirren shook her head, backing up a step. "Why would the most powerful king on the continent come looking for a worthless exile?" "Because you're not worthless." The words hit her like a physical blow. For a moment she couldn't speak. Couldn't process what he'd said. She had heard herself called worthless so many times that she had started to believe it. To accept it. To wear it like a second skin. And now this stranger, this enemy king, was looking at her as if she were something precious. "I've searched for 3 years," Calyx continued, his voice low and urgent, sent scouts to every corner of every kingdom, followed rumors and legends and the ravings of dying seers. They all pointed to the same thing. A wolf born under the bleeding moon, a wolf with silver eyes who carries the light of the ancients in her veins. His gaze held hers, unblinking. A moonborn. Mirren's blood turned to ice. "I don't know what that is," she said quickly, too quickly. "Yes, you do." He stepped closer. "You know exactly what you are. You've always known, even if you couldn't name it. That's why your wolf won't emerge. She's waiting." Waiting for what? For the bond that will unlock her. Mirren's heart was hammering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. This was madness. She wasn't special. She wasn't powerful. She was a defective wolf who couldn't shift, couldn't fight, and couldn't even keep a roof over her head. But Calyx was looking at her like she was salvation itself. "My kingdom is dying," he said quietly. "A shadow blight has been spreading across Astravar for a decade. It kills everything it touches, crops, animals, people. My healers have tried everything. Nothing works." He exhaled slowly. "An ancient prophecy speaks of only one cure, a moonborn who can draw the corruption out of the land and purify it with her light." "And you think that's me?" Mirren's voice cracked. "You're insane. I can't even shift. How could I possibly save anyone? Come with me to Astravar." The words were soft, almost gentle. "Let me prove what you are. And if I'm wrong, if you truly are what Corvain claimed, I'll return you here with enough gold to live comfortably for the rest of your life." Mirren stared at him. This was a trap. It had to be a trap. But then again, what did she have to lose? She was already dead. Corvain had made sure of that. Living or dying hardly mattered anymore. "And if you're right," she whispered, "if I am this moonborn?" Calyx's expression shifted. Something raw and desperate broke through that controlled exterior for just a moment. "Then you'll become my queen," he said, "and together, we'll save my people." Before Mirren could respond, one of the soldiers called out a warning. "Your Majesty, riders approaching from the east, Velmoran banners." Myron's stomach dropped. Corvain's men, here. But that was impossible. She was exiled, forgotten. Why would Corvain send soldiers to the borderlands unless someone had discovered what she really was? And they'd come to make sure she never found out. Calyx moved faster than Myron could process. One moment he was standing before her, and the next she was behind him, shielded by the wall of his body as he faced the approaching riders. "Stay close to me," he commanded. "Whatever happens, do not run." Myron wanted to argue. She had been running and hiding for 7 months. It was the only thing keeping her alive. But something in his voice, some absolute authority that vibrated through her bones, made her obey. The Velmoran soldiers emerged from the tree line, 8 of them, wearing the silver and black of Corvain's personal guard. Their leader, a scarred man with dead eyes, pulled his horse to a stop 20 feet away. "Alpha King Calyx," the man said, his tone dripping with false respect. "You're a long way from Astravar." "I'm exactly where I intended to be," Calyx replied calmly. The soldier's gaze slid past him to Myren. Something ugly flickered in his expression. "The exile," he said. "We've come to collect her." "On whose authority?" "Alpha King Corvain's." The soldier produced a scroll, though he made no move to hand it over. "The woman is wanted for questioning regarding crimes against the crown." "Crimes against the crown?" Myren almost laughed. She had been stripped of everything. Cast out like garbage. What possible crime could she commit from a frozen cave in the borderlands? But she knew, with sudden horrible certainty, that this had nothing to do with crimes. They knew. Somehow, they had discovered what Calyx believed her to be, and they had come to silence her before she could become a threat. "The woman is under my protection," Calyx said, and though his voice remained level, Myren felt the alpha power rolling off him in waves. It crashed against the soldiers like a physical force, making several of their horses stamp nervously. The scarred soldier didn't flinch. "With respect, Your Majesty, you have no authority here. This is Velmoran territory. The borderlands fall under Alpha King Corvain's jurisdiction." "The borderlands are unclaimed," Calyx corrected. "That's why exiles are sent here. No pack, no kingdom, no law. Which means Corvain has no more claim to this woman than I do." He smiled, and it was not a pleasant smile. "Less, actually." He cast her out. "I'm taking her in." The soldier's hand moved toward his sword. "I wouldn't," Calyx said softly. The air changed. Myren felt it, a pressure building in her chest, a hum of power that made her skin prickle. The soldiers' horses began to panic, whites of their eyes showing as they fought against their reins. And then she saw it. Calyx's eyes were glowing, not reflecting light, glowing, amber fire burning in his irises, bright enough to cast shadows. "You are 8 men," he said, each word precise and deliberate. "My personal guard has killed more than that before breakfast, and I—" He took one step forward, and 2 of the soldiers' horses bolted entirely, their riders struggling to control them. "I have killed more men than you have met in your entire life." The scarred soldier's composure finally cracked. Myren saw his throat move as he swallowed. "Alpha King Corvain will hear of this," he said, but his voice had lost its authority. "Taking one of his subjects by force is an act of war. She is not his subject. She is an exile. And I am not taking her by force." Calyx glanced back at Myren, those burning eyes finding hers. "I'm offering her a choice." Everyone turned to look at her. Myren stood frozen, painfully aware of how small and pathetic she must appear. Thin from months of starvation, dressed in rags, hair tangled and unwashed. Silver eyes wide with fear. But beneath the fear, something else was stirring. Hope. Terrifying, dangerous hope. "Come with me," Calyx said quietly, "and I swear on my blood that no one will ever hurt you again." She thought of Corvain's cold gray eyes, of Selene's satisfied smile, of the years of whispers and cruelty, and being told she was nothing, would always be nothing, and deserved nothing. And then she thought of this man, this enemy king who had searched for 3 years and crossed enemy territory and faced down soldiers for her. Who looked at her like she mattered. "I'll go with you," Mirren said. The scarred soldier's face twisted with fury. "You're making a mistake, girl, when Corvain learns of this." "Corvain cast me out," Mirren interrupted, and for the first time in months, her voice was steady. "He told the entire court I was worthless. He stripped me of everything and sent me here to die." She met the soldier's gaze without flinching. "You can tell him I said thank you." She walked toward Calyx, each step feeling like a choice, like a declaration, like the first moment of her new life. Calyx helped her onto his horse, settling her in front of him with surprising gentleness, his arm wrapped around her waist, steady and warm. "Hold on," he murmured against her ear. And then, they were riding. The soldiers didn't follow. The journey to Astravar took 3 days, 3 days of riding through frozen forests and snow-covered mountains, 3 days of camping beneath winter stars while Calyx's soldiers kept watch. 3 days of Mirren gradually realizing that everything she had been taught about the rival kingdom was a lie. Corvain had always described Astravar as savage, brutal, a kingdom of warmongering monsters who delighted in bloodshed. But Calyx's soldiers treated her with unfailing courtesy. They offered her the warmest blankets, the best portions of food. They called her "my lady" without a trace of mockery. And Calyx himself. He barely touched her, except when necessary, kept a respectful distance when they made camp, asked her questions about her life, her interests, her dreams, and actually listened to her answers. No one had listened to Mirren in a very long time. On the second night, huddled by the fire while the soldiers slept, she finally asked the question that had been burning in her mind. "Why didn't you just take me?" she whispered. "You're the Alpha King. You could have commanded me to come, could have thrown me over your horse like a prize of war." She met his eyes across the flames. "Why did you give me a choice?" Calyx was quiet for a long moment. "Because someone should have," he said finally. "Long ago, before Corvain and Selene and all the cruelty. Someone should have asked what you wanted. Someone should have given you the power to decide your own fate." His jaw tightened. "I couldn't change your past, but I could give you a choice about your future." Mirren's throat constricted. "You don't know me," she managed. "You don't know anything about me except some ancient prophecy that might not even be true. Why do you care?" The firelight caught his amber eyes, turning them to molten gold. "Because I know what it feels like," Calyx said quietly. "To be told you're nothing. To believe it. To carry that weight until it crushes something vital inside you." He looked away, into the darkness beyond the fire. "I was not always a king. I was not always powerful. Before my father died, before the crown passed to me, I was the second son. The spare, the disappointment." Mirren stared at him. "My brother was everything I wasn't," Calyx continued. "Strong, confident, born to lead. My father made it clear every day that I was unnecessary. A backup plan he hoped he'd never need." His voice dropped. "When my brother died, when I took the throne, I swore I would never make anyone feel the way my father made me feel. I would never look at another person and see nothing." The fire crackled between them. "The first time I heard of the Moonborn prophecy," he said, "it described someone marked as worthless, someone cast out, someone the world had given up on." His eyes found hers again. "It described you, Mirren. And I knew, even before I found you, that you would be the one. Because only someone who has been broken can understand how to heal." Mirren didn't realize she was crying until she felt the tears freezing on her cheeks. She wiped at them quickly, embarrassed. But Calyx just looked at her with something like understanding. "Get some sleep," he said gently. "Tomorrow we reach Astravar, and everything will change." The city rose from the mountains like a crown of stone and gold. Mirren had never seen anything like it. Velmoran's capital was all hard angles and dark stone, built to intimidate. But Astrovar gleamed in the winter sunlight, its towers spiraling toward the sky, its walls carved with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and dance as she watched. And the people. They lined the streets as Calyx rode through, cheering and waving and calling out blessings. Children threw winter flowers. Elderly women reached out to touch the hem of his cloak. Soldiers saluted with fists over their hearts. They loved him. Mierin couldn't reconcile this with the monster Corvain had described. The bloodthirsty tyrant, the savage warrior, the enemy of all that was good. She glanced back at Calyx, who was nodding to his people with quiet dignity. "They seem happy to see you," she said softly. "They've been afraid for a long time," he replied. "The blight has taken too many lives. Too many villages have been abandoned. When I left to find the Moonborn, I gave them hope." His arm tightened slightly around her waist. "Now I've returned with you." Guilt twisted in Mierin's stomach. What if she wasn't what he thought? What if she failed? The cheering crowd would turn to mourners. The hope in their eyes would die, and it would be her fault. They rode through the main gates into the castle courtyard, where a delegation waited on the steps. Nobles and advisors and servants, all arranged in formal lines, all staring at her with varying degrees of curiosity and skepticism. One figure stood apart from the rest. A woman, tall and willowy, with hair the color of burnished copper and eyes like chips of green ice. She was beautiful in a cold, sharp way, and she was looking at Mierin with something that went beyond skepticism. It was hatred, pure and undisguised. "My king," the woman said, as Calyx dismounted. Her voice was honey over broken glass. "You've returned. We were beginning to worry." "Your worry is appreciated, Ravenna." Calyx helped Mierin down, his hands lingering at her waist a moment longer than necessary. Though unnecessary. Ravenna's green eyes tracked every point of contact between them. "And this is—" She let the question hang, laden with judgment. "This is Mierin," Calyx said. "She will be staying in the Queen's chambers." The courtyard went absolutely silent. Mierin felt the weight of dozens of stares, all of them shocked, most of them hostile. The Queen's chambers. Even she understood what that meant. Ravenna's mask of composure cracked for just an instant. Something ugly flashed beneath before she smoothed it away. "The Queen's chambers," she repeated carefully. "Your Majesty, perhaps we should discuss this privately." "There's nothing to discuss." Calyx's voice carried the same authority he'd used on the Velmoran soldiers. "Mierin is to be treated as an honored guest. Anyone who disrespects her disrespects me." He offered Mierin his arm. She took it, trying to project a confidence she didn't feel, and together they walked up the steps past the silent delegation. Ravenna's eyes followed them the entire way. The Queen's chambers were larger than any space Mierin had ever occupied. A massive bed dominated one wall, draped in silks of deep blue and silver. A fireplace crackled with warmth. Windows stretched from floor to ceiling, offering views of the mountains and the city below. And servants. So many servants. They poured her a bath scented with rose oil. They brushed her hair until it shone. They dressed her in gowns softer than anything she'd ever touched, fitted her with shoes that didn't pinch, draped her in jewels that caught the light. When Mierin finally looked in the mirror, she didn't recognize herself. The thin, dirty exile was gone. In her place stood a woman with silver eyes that gleamed like starlight and cheekbones that had been hidden beneath months of hunger. She looked almost beautiful. "The king requests your presence at dinner," one of the servants announced. Mierin's stomach knotted. Dinner. With the entire court. Every noble and advisor who had stared at her with such suspicion. Every enemy waiting for her to fail. But she had survived Corvain's cruelty. She had survived exile. She could survive a meal. The great hall was even more intimidating than she'd expected. Long tables filled with nobles in fine clothing, servants moving with practiced efficiency. Musicians playing softly in one corner, and at the head of the room, on a raised dais, sat Calyx. He rose when she entered. The entire hall followed suit, standing in deference, and Mirren realized with a start that they were standing for her. For her. She walked the length of the hall on trembling legs, painfully aware of every whisper, every sideways glance. When she reached the dais, Calix took her hand and guided her to the seat beside him. "You look stunning," he said quietly. "I look terrified," Mirren whispered back. "That too." His lips quirked. "But you're here anyway. That takes courage." The meal began. Course after course of food richer than anything Mirren had ever tasted. Wine that warmed her blood. Conversation that swirled around her without requiring her participation. She was starting to relax when Ravenna spoke. "I've been curious about something," the copper-haired woman said, her voice carrying across the table. "Our new guest claims to be a moonborn, a creature of legend, and yet—" She smiled sweetly. "I see no proof. No display of power, no shifting." The hall went quiet. Myron's fork froze halfway to her mouth. "The prophecy says the moonborn's power awakens through the mate bond," Calix said evenly. "It takes time." "Time." Ravenna's smile didn't waver. "Of course. How convenient." She turned to address the hall at large. "We've all heard the stories. Our king searched for 3 years, spent countless resources, chased rumors across the continent. And now he returns with a woman who cannot prove she is anything special at all." Her green eyes found Mirren's. "Tell me, dear, are you certain you're not simply a clever fraud hoping to warm the king's bed?" Gasps rippled through the hall. Mirren felt heat flooding her face. Her hands were shaking. The old familiar shame was rising in her chest, the voice that whispered she was worthless, would always be worthless. But then Calix moved. He rose to his feet, and the hall fell deathly silent. "Lady Ravenna," he said, and though his voice was calm, something dangerous lurked beneath. "You forget yourself. I simply ask what everyone is thinking. You insult a guest under my protection." He stepped down from the dais, walking toward her with slow, deliberate steps. "You question my judgment. You imply your king has been deceived by a commoner." Ravenna's composure finally cracked. She paled, shrinking back in her seat. "I meant no disrespect, your majesty." "And yet, disrespect is what you delivered." Calix stopped before her, looming over her chair. "Myron is not on trial. She does not need to prove herself to you or anyone else in this room. She is my guest, and if she chooses to become my queen, she will be exactly that." "If she chooses," the words echoed through the hall, and Mirren felt something crack open in her chest. He wasn't forcing her. Even now, with his entire court watching, he was giving her a choice. "Now," Calix continued, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried to every corner of the room. "You will apologize to her." Ravenna looked like she'd swallowed something rotten. "I apologize," she gritted out. "For any offense?" "To her," Calix repeated, "not to the heir." Ravenna's eyes found Myron's. The hatred there had deepened, curdling into something poisonous. "I apologize," she said through clenched teeth. "My lady." Calix returned to his seat, taking Myron's hand and pressing a kiss to her knuckles. "Anyone else with questions?" he asked the hall. Silence answered him. The rest of the meal passed without incident, but Mirren couldn't shake the chill that had settled over her. Ravenna wanted her gone. That much was clear, and something told Myron that a public humiliation wouldn't be the end of it. Later that night, Myron stood by the window of her chambers, staring out at the moonlit mountains. A knock came at the door. "Come in," she called. Calix entered, still dressed in the fine clothes from dinner, though he looked tired. The shadows under his eyes were darker than they'd been that morning. "I wanted to check on you," he said, "after what happened with Ravenna." "I'm fine." Mirren hugged herself. "I've heard worse." "That doesn't make it acceptable." She turned to look at him. "Who is she to you?" "Ravenna?" Something flickered across his face. "She was meant to be my queen. An arranged match. Negotiated when we were children. I ended the betrothal 3 years ago, when I began searching for the Moonborn. Everything suddenly made sense. She hates me, Mirren said quietly, because I took her place. A place she never truly held. Calyx moved closer. I never loved her, Myron. I never even wanted her. The betrothal was politics, nothing more. But she wanted you. He was silent for a moment. Then, yes, I believe she did. Mirren looked out the window again. The moon was full and bright, casting silver light across the snow. Why me? She whispered. You've searched for 3 years. You've clearly had options. Beautiful women, powerful women, women who could actually shift. Why did you choose the broken one? Calyx moved to stand beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. Because the prophecy isn't about power, he said quietly. It's about heart. The Moonborn isn't special because of what she can do. She's special because of who she is. He turned to face her, amber eyes catching the moonlight. Someone who has been wounded and survived. Someone who has been told she's nothing and refused to disappear. Someone whose capacity for healing comes from knowing exactly how much pain can break a person. Mirren's eyes burned with unshed tears. You see things in me that I've never seen in myself, she breathed. Then let me help you see them. He reached out, his fingers brushing a strand of hair from her face. His touch was gentle, almost reverent. I know you're afraid, he said. I know you don't trust easily, but I swear to you, Mirren, on everything I am, that I will never hurt you. I will never cast you out. I will never make you feel worthless. She wanted to believe him. Gods, how she wanted to believe him. But Corvain had made promises too, before the cruelty, before the exile. How can you be so sure? She asked, her voice trembling. How do you know I'm the one? Calyx smiled, and it transformed his face, made him look younger, softer, and almost hopeful. Because when I'm near you, he said quietly, I feel something I've never felt before. A pull, a warmth. Like my wolf is finally waking up after years of silence. Mirren's breath caught. She felt it too. Had felt it since the moment he'd appeared in the borderlands. A stirring deep in her chest, where her hollow wolf had slumbered for so long. What does that mean? She whispered. It means the bond is forming. Calyx's eyes held hers. It means you're my mate, Myron. And when that bond completes, when your wolf finally awakens, you'll be the most powerful creature in this kingdom. Before she could respond, a commotion erupted outside her door. Shouting, running footsteps, the clash of steel. Calyx's expression shifted instantly from tender to deadly. Stay here, he commanded. He was out the door before she could protest. Mirren stood frozen, heart pounding as the sounds of fighting grew louder. Screams, the thud of bodies. And then, cutting through it all, a voice she recognized. Corvain's voice. Where is she? Where is my worthless little wolf? He had come for her. And this time, he wasn't going to let her go. Mirren didn't stay. She couldn't. Not when Corvain's voice echoed through the halls like a blade scraping against stone. Not when the sounds of fighting grew closer with every heartbeat. She slipped out the servants' entrance, following the narrow corridor toward the source of the chaos. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Her palms were slick with sweat. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to hide, and to become invisible the way she'd learned in the borderlands. But she was done running. The great hall was in chaos when she reached it. Corvain stood at the center of the room, flanked by 20 soldiers in Velmoran silver. His gray eyes were wild, his handsome face twisted with fury. Blood dripped from a gash on his cheek, but he didn't seem to notice. Calyx faced him across a gap of 10 feet, his own soldiers forming a protective line. His amber eyes burned with that same strange glow Mirren had witnessed in the borderlands. You have no authority here, Calyx said, his voice deadly calm. You've violated the borders of my kingdom. You've attacked my people in my own hall. This is an act of war, Corvain. War? Corvain laughed, the sound unhinged. You stole what belongs to me. That worthless creature is my property, my exile, my mistake to correct. She belongs to no one, Calyx growled, least of all you. Corvain's eyes scanned the room, searching. When they landed on Miren standing in the doorway, his expression shifted. Hunger, possession, rage. There she is, he breathed. My little hollow wolf. Did you think you could escape me? Did you think hiding behind another king would protect you? Miren's legs threatened to buckle, but she forced herself to stand tall. You cast me out, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. You called me worthless in front of your entire court. You sent me to die in the borderlands. She took a step forward. I am not yours anymore, Corvain. I never truly was. Something dangerous flickered in his gray eyes. You don't understand what you are, he said softly. I didn't either. Not until after. Not until my seers told me what the silver eyes meant, what the bleeding moonbirth meant. His lip curled. You're a weapon, Miren. A living weapon. And I will not let my enemy possess what should have been mine. The truth hit her like a physical blow. He hadn't come because he wanted her. He had come because he finally understood her value, and he couldn't bear the thought of someone else wielding it. She was still just a thing to him, an object, a tool. She's not a weapon, Calyx said quietly. She's a person. And she has already made her choice. Her choice means nothing, Corvain roared. She's a defective wolf who can't even shift. What kind of choice can she possibly? I choose him. Miren's voice rang through the hall, cutting Corvain off mid-sentence. Everyone turned to stare at her. The soldiers, the nobles who had gathered to watch. Even Calyx himself, his amber eyes widening with something she couldn't name. I choose Calyx, she repeated, stronger now. I choose Astravar. I choose to stay here, not as a weapon, not as a tool, but as myself. She met Corvain's furious gaze without flinching. You had me for 23 years and saw nothing but shame. He found me in 3 weeks and saw everything you were too blind to notice. Corvain's face contorted with rage. You'll regret this, he snarled. Both of you will regret this. Perhaps, Calyx said calmly, but not today. He raised his hand and his soldiers moved. The battle was brief and brutal. Corvain's men were outnumbered and outmatched, fighting in enemy territory against warriors who knew every corner of their own hall. Within minutes, it was over. The Velmoran soldiers were disarmed and forced to their knees. Only Corvain remained standing, held at sword point by 6 of Calyx's guards. Kill me, he spat. End it now, if you have the courage. Calyx walked toward him slowly, each step deliberate. Killing you would be mercy, he said. And you've earned none from me. He stopped inches away, looming over his rival. You will return to Velmoran. You will tell your court that you came here seeking your exile, and I refuse to give her up. You will tell them that I have claimed her as mine, and that any further attempt to take her will be met with the full force of my army. Corvain's jaw clenched. You're making a mistake. The only mistake was yours. Calyx's voice dropped to a whisper. You had a treasure and you threw her away. Now she's mine, and I will never let her go. The words echoed through the hall. Miren felt them settle into her bones, warm and terrifying and impossibly real. Mine. He had called her his. And for the first time in her life, she didn't want to run from that claim. The guards escorted Corvain and his soldiers to the border. Miren watched them go from the castle balcony, her fingers gripping the stone railing until her knuckles turned white. The winter wind whipped at her hair, but she barely felt the cold. Footsteps approached behind her. You shouldn't be out here, Calyx said. It's freezing. I needed to see them leave. She didn't turn around. I needed to know it was real. He moved to stand beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. It's real, he said quietly. You're safe, Miren. He can't hurt you anymore. She wanted to believe him, desperately. But something Corvain had said was echoing in her mind. He called me a weapon, she whispered. Is that what I am to you too? A tool to save your kingdom? Calyx was silent for a long moment. When I first started searching, he said finally, yes. I won't lie to you. The prophecy described someone who could heal the blight, and that was all I cared about. Saving my people. Stopping the death. He turned to face her. But then I found you. I saw you standing by that frozen stream, thin and starving and utterly alone, and something changed. What changed? His amber eyes held hers. I stopped thinking about what you could do for my kingdom, he said softly, and started thinking about what I could do for you. Mirren's breath caught. I don't know how to be what you need, she admitted, her voice trembling. I've never been powerful, I've never been special. I don't even know if I can awaken this supposed light inside me. Calyx reached out, his fingers catching her chin and tilting her face up toward his. Then we'll figure it out together, he said. No pressure, no demands, just time and patience, and whatever you need to feel safe. A tear slipped down her cheek before she could stop it. Why are you so kind to me? She breathed. Because you deserve kindness. His thumb brushed away the tear. And because, whether you believe it or not, you've already awakened something in me. Before she could respond, a servant appeared in the doorway. Your Majesty, she said urgently. The healer needs you. Another village has fallen to the blight. The survivors are arriving now. The warmth in Calyx's eyes vanished, replaced by grim determination. How many? He asked. 37. Mostly children. His jaw tightened. Prepare the infirmary, I'll be there shortly. The servant bowed and disappeared. Calyx turned back to Mirren, and she saw the weight he carried, the burden of watching his people die, one village at a time. Come with me, he said quietly, see what we're fighting against. It wasn't a command, it was an invitation, and Mirren understood that this was a test too, not of her power, but of her heart. Yes, she said, I'll come. The infirmary was a nightmare made real. Children lay on cots lining both walls, their small bodies ravaged by the blight. Their skin had turned gray and papery. Dark veins pulsed visibly beneath the surface, spreading outward from their hearts like cracks in shattered glass. Some were unconscious. Others whimpered weakly, too exhausted to cry. The smell hit Mirren first. Rot and decay, and something else. Something wrong that made her hollow wolf stir restlessly in her chest. The blight doesn't kill quickly, Calyx said beside her, his voice heavy with grief. It takes weeks, sometimes months. The corruption spreads slowly, consuming everything healthy until there's nothing left. A healer approached, her face lined with exhaustion. Your Majesty, she said. We've made them as comfortable as we can, but... She shook her head. There's nothing more we can do. Mirren walked slowly down the row of cots, her heart breaking with each step. A little girl, no more than 5, reached out with a trembling hand. Her silver eyes, so like Mirren's own, were clouded with pain. Are you the Moon Lady? The girl whispered. The one who's going to save us? Mirren knelt beside her, taking that small, cold hand in both of hers. I'm going to try, she said, her voice thick. I promise I'm going to try. The girl smiled weakly. I knew you'd come. Mama said the light would come. Something cracked open inside Mirren. She looked down at their joined hands, at the dark veins pulsing beneath the girl's translucent skin. And deep in her chest, something stirred. Not her wolf. Something else. Something warm and bright and ancient. Mirren. Calyx's voice was sharp with concern. Your eyes. She didn't understand until she looked up and saw her reflection in the metal basin beside the cot. Her silver eyes were glowing, not like Calyx's amber fire, but softer, purer, like moonlight given physical form. The light spread from her eyes to her hands, spilling into the little girl's body like water filling an empty vessel. The child gasped. The dark veins retreated. Just slightly, barely perceptible, but Mirren saw it. The corruption was pulling back. Then the light flickered and died. Mirren collapsed backward, caught by Calyx before she hit the floor. Her head was spinning. Her body felt hollow, drained of something essential. "What happened?" she gasped. Calyx was staring at her with wonder. "You healed her," he breathed. "Not completely, but the blight retreated." "I saw it." The healer rushed over, examining the little girl with trembling hands. "He's right," she said, her voice awed. "The corruption has stopped spreading. It's actually reversed slightly." She looked at Mirren with something like reverence. "In 10 years of fighting this blight, I've never seen anything like it." Mirren tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. "Why am I so weak?" she whispered. "You drew on the light without a completed bond," Calyx said quietly. "Without your wolf awakened, you have no anchor. The power flows through you, but it takes pieces of your life force with it." Horror washed over her. "You mean I could die?" she breathed. "If I try to heal them all, I could." "Yes." His arms tightened around her. "That's why the bond matters. That's why I need to be your anchor, to give you a source of strength outside yourself." He looked down at her, amber eyes burning with intensity. "But I won't force it. I won't rush you. If you're not ready, I am." The words left her mouth before she could second-guess them. "I'm ready," she repeated. "Those children are dying. Your people are dying. If the bond will help me save them, then I want it." She met his gaze. "I choose you, Calyx. Completely." Something raw and vulnerable crossed his face. "You're certain?" he asked. "Once the bond forms, it cannot be broken. You will feel what I feel, and I will feel what you feel. We will be connected until death." "I know." She reached up, her weak fingers touching his jaw. "I've spent my whole life being alone, being empty, feeling nothing but shame and fear." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I don't want to be alone anymore." Calyx exhaled shakily. "Then we'll complete the bond tonight," he said. "When you've recovered your strength." He lifted her easily, carrying her out of the infirmary while servants rushed to clear a path. Mirren let her head rest against his shoulder, too exhausted to protest. But beneath the exhaustion, something else was growing. Hope. They gave her the rest of the day to recover. Servants brought broth and bread and herbal tea that warmed her from the inside out. The blind maid assigned to her, a gentle woman named Thessaly, brushed her hair and helped her bathe, and never once asked intrusive questions. By nightfall, Mirren felt almost human again. She was standing by the window when Calyx arrived. He had changed from his formal clothes into something simpler. Dark trousers, a loose white shirt, no crown or jewelry. He looked less like a king and more like a man, a very handsome man. Myron's cheeks flushed as she registered the thought. "How are you feeling?" he asked, closing the door behind him. "Stronger." She turned to face him. "Nervous." "That's understandable." He walked toward her slowly, giving her time to retreat if she wished. "The bond can be intense, especially the first time." "Have you done this before?" she asked. "Bonded with someone?" "No." His voice was quiet. "I've taken lovers, but I've never formed a true mate bond. I was waiting." "Waiting for what?" "For you." The simple honesty of the words made her heart ache. "Calyx," she whispered. "I need to tell you something before we do this." He stopped a foot away from her. "Anything." "I've never..." She swallowed hard. "I've never been with anyone. Not truly. Corvain courted me for a year before the exile, but we never..." He said he was waiting for the ceremony. Looking back, I think he was simply disgusted by me. Calyx's expression darkened. "His loss," he said quietly. "His unfathomable loss." "I'm scared," she admitted. "Not of you. Never of you. But of disappointing you. Of being inadequate." Calyx reached out, his fingers threading gently through her hair. "You could never disappoint me," he murmured. And there is nothing inadequate about you, Miren, nothing hollow or worthless or broken. His thumb traced her cheekbone. You are the most extraordinary person I have ever met. And I will spend every day proving that to you until you believe it. Tears burned behind her eyes. Show me, she breathed. Show me what it feels like to be wanted. He kissed her. It was gentle at first, tentative. A question, rather than a demand. But when she kissed him back, wrapping her arms around his neck and pressing closer, something ignited between them. His hands spanned her waist, pulling her against him. His mouth grew more insistent, exploring, tasting. She felt his heartbeat hammering against her chest, matching the rhythm of her own, and deep inside her, something finally stirred. Her wolf. After 23 years of silence, her wolf was waking up. I feel you. Calyx groaned against her lips. I feel her stirring. Don't stop, Miren gasped. Please don't stop. He didn't. He carried her to the bed with reverent hands and laid her down like she was precious. He removed her clothing piece by piece, pressing kisses to every inch of skin he revealed. He whispered words against her body, words like beautiful and perfect and mine. And when they finally came together, Miren understood at last what it meant to be complete. The bond snapped into place like a key turning in a lock. She felt Calyx's emotions flooding into her. His desire, his tenderness, his fierce protectiveness. Beneath it all, something deeper. Something that felt terrifyingly like love. And he felt her too. All of her. The fear and the hope and the desperate longing for belonging. They moved together, learning each other's rhythms, building towards something vast and unknowable. The light that had flickered in the infirmary now blazed behind Miren's eyes, growing brighter with every touch. When the peak finally came, it crashed over them both like a wave. Miren cried out, her back arching off the bed. Moonlight burst from her skin, filling the room with silver radiance, and inside her chest, her wolf howled for the first time. She was awake. She was whole. She was powerful beyond anything she had ever imagined. Later, tangled together in sheets damp with sweat, Miren lay with her head on Calyx's chest and listened to his heartbeat. I can feel you, she whispered. Inside me. It's like I've been empty my whole life, and now I'm finally full. His fingers traced lazy patterns on her back. The bond will grow stronger over time, he said. Eventually, we'll be able to communicate without words, to share thoughts and images. That sounds terrifying, she admitted. He laughed softly. It can be. No more secrets. No more secrets. The words made her pause. Calyx, she said slowly. When you searched for me, your seers described the Moonborn. They knew what I would look like, what I could do. She lifted her head to meet his eyes. But they didn't know where to find me. That's why it took 3 years. Yes, he said carefully. But Corvain found you immediately. He knew exactly where you'd taken me. He arrived within days. Calyx's expression flickered. You think someone told him? He said. I know someone told him. Miren sat up, pulling the sheet around herself. Someone in your court knew where I was. Someone sent word to Velmoran. The warmth in Calyx's eyes gave way to cold fury. Ravenna, he growled. Maybe. Or maybe someone else. But Calyx. She gripped his hand. Whoever betrayed you is still here. Still watching. And when they realize I've awakened my power, they'll try again. He was silent for a long moment. Then he pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her like a shield. Let them try, he said quietly. Anyone who threatens you answers to me, and I am not kind to traitors. Miren wanted to believe they were safe, but deep in her chest, where the bond pulsed with new warmth, she felt a shadow. Something dark was coming, and the betrayer was closer than either of them realized. The weeks that followed were the happiest of Miren's life. Every morning she woke in Calyx's arms, surrounded by warmth she had never known existed. Every night, They explored each other's bodies and souls, the bond deepening with each passing day, and her power grew. Under the guidance of an ancient scholar named Orenthal, Mirren learned to control the moonlight that lived inside her. She could summon it at will now, channeling it through her hands into the blighted victims who filled the infirmary. She couldn't heal them completely. Not yet. The corruption was too deep, too entrenched. But she could slow its progress. Buy them time. Give them hope. It was more than anyone else had managed in a decade. "You're a miracle," the healer told her one morning, tears streaming down her weathered face. "Those children were supposed to die, and now they're playing in the courtyard." Mirren watched through the window as the little silver-eyed girl chased her friends around the garden. She was still pale, still fragile, but she was alive. Alive because of Mirren. The thought filled her with something foreign and wonderful. Purpose. For the first time in her life, she had purpose. The council meeting that afternoon should have been routine. Mirren sat beside Calyx, still unused to her place at the table but no longer afraid of it. The nobles had warmed to her over the past weeks, especially after word spread of her healing abilities. Even the skeptics had begun to bow their heads when she passed. Only Ravenna remained hostile. The copper-haired woman sat at the far end of the table, her green eyes fixed on Mirren with unblinking intensity. She hadn't spoken a word against Mirren since the public humiliation, but her hatred was palpable. "The Blight has retreated from 2 more villages," the chief advisor was saying. "Reports indicate the corruption is weakening at the source." "That's excellent news," Calyx said. "Mirren's efforts are working." Several council members murmured their agreement. A few even smiled at her. Ravenna did not smile. "The source," she said suddenly, her voice cutting through the murmurs. "Has anyone actually investigated it? Or are we simply treating symptoms while the disease continues to spread?" The room went quiet. "We've sent scouts," the chief advisor said carefully. "But the blighted lands are dangerous. Most don't return." "Then perhaps," Ravenna continued, her eyes never leaving Mirren, "our new queen should go herself. After all, if her light can heal victims, surely it can purify the source." Mirren felt Calyx stiffen beside her. "Absolutely not," he said. "The source is in the heart of the corruption. Sending Mirren there would be suicide." "Would it?" Ravenna's smile was poison wrapped in silk. "She's so powerful, after all. So miraculous. Surely she wouldn't refuse to help if the alternative is watching your people die." The trap was elegant and brutal. If Mirren agreed, she would be walking into certain death. If she refused, she would appear cowardly and selfish. Ravenna had been planning this. "I'll go." The words came from Mirren before she fully registered speaking them. Calyx's hand gripped hers under the table. The bond carried his fear crashing against his fury. "Mirren," he said tightly. "A word. In private." He barely waited for the study door to close before rounding on her. "What were you thinking?" he demanded. "You just volunteered to walk into the most dangerous place in the kingdom." "I was thinking about those children," Mirren said calmly. "I was thinking about your people dying in their beds while we sit in this castle and wait for them. And I was thinking about losing you." His voice broke. "I just found you. I can't." He turned away, running both hands through his hair. His terror flooded through their connection, raw and overwhelming and utterly at odds with the powerful king he presented to the world. She moved closer, placing her hand on his back. "You won't lose me," she said softly. "You don't know that." "No," she admitted. "But I know that I can't sit here and do nothing while people suffer. Not when I have the power to help." She moved around him, forcing him to meet her eyes. "You searched for me because of a prophecy. A prophecy that said the Moonborn could heal the blight. Not just slow it. Heal it." His jaw tightened. "The prophecy also says the Moonborn must sacrifice something precious to purify the source," he said quietly. "We never told you that part." Ice flooded Mirren's veins. "What kind of sacrifice?" "We don't know." His eyes held hers. "But I won't let it be you. I won't let you become a martyr for my kingdom." It's my kingdom now too, she reminded him gently. You made me queen. These are my people as much as yours. Calyx exhaled shakily. How did I fall so hard for someone so stubborn? He murmured. Despite everything, Mirren smiled. Probably the same way I fell for someone so overprotective. His arms wrapped around her, pulling her close. If you insist on going, he said against her hair, then I'm going with you. The kingdom needs you here. The kingdom means nothing without you. The words should have felt excessive, dramatic. Instead, they felt like truth. Together then, Mirren whispered. We face the source together. Calyx pulled back, his amber eyes burning into hers. Together, he agreed. But we prepare first. We train. We learn everything we can about the corruption and how to fight it. His jaw set. And we find the traitor who keeps feeding information to our enemies. A chill ran down Mirren's spine. You think the Blight and the Betrayer are connected? I think nothing in this kingdom happens by coincidence. He released her, moving toward the door. The Blight began 10 years ago, shortly after Ravenna's father became chief advisor to my father. And it's been spreading ever since, always staying just ahead of our efforts to contain it. Mirren's mind raced. You think Ravenna's family is responsible for the Blight? I think Ravenna's family has been benefiting from it, Calyx said grimly. Every time a village falls, the survivors flee to the capital. They need food, shelter, work. And who controls the grain stores? Who owns the labor contracts? Ravenna's father. Exactly. The pieces clicked into place with horrible clarity. The Blight wasn't a natural disaster. It was manufactured. And the woman who hated Mirren most in the world was at the center of it. We need proof, Mirren said. Then we'll get proof. Calyx opened the door. But carefully. If Ravenna suspects we're investigating her, she'll destroy any evidence. Or worse. Or worse. The words hung in the air like a threat. That night, Mirren lay awake in Calyx's arms, staring at the ceiling. She had come to Astrovar expecting nothing. Hoping for nothing. Just survival. One day at a time. Instead, she had found love. Power. Purpose. And now, enemies who wanted to destroy all of it. Whatever happens, she whispered into the darkness, I won't let them win. Calyx stirred beside her, his arms tightening. Neither will I, he murmured. Neither will I. But somewhere in the castle, hidden in shadows, a figure watched and waited. And the real betrayal hadn't even begun. The investigation took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of secret meetings, whispered conversations, and carefully gathered evidence. 3 weeks of Mirren playing the gracious queen while Calyx played the unsuspecting king. 3 weeks of watching Ravenna smile her poisonous smile, never knowing they were closing in. And now, they had her. The documents are irrefutable, the chief advisor said, spreading the papers across Calyx's desk. Lord Vanthros has been diverting grain shipments for over a decade. The shortages that forced refugees into labor contracts were manufactured. And these letters... He tapped a stack of parchment. These prove Ravenna knew everything. Mirren stared at the evidence with sick fascination. Letters in Ravenna's own hand, detailing payments to alchemists who specialized in corruption magic. Records of bribes to officials who looked the other way. And most damning of all, a single page that connected everything. A map of the Blight spread, marked with dates. Each date corresponded to a payment. Each payment preceded a new outbreak by exactly 1 week. They hadn't just been profiting from the Blight. They had been creating it. How many people? Mirren whispered. How many people have died because of this? The chief advisor's face was gray. Thousands, he said quietly. Perhaps tens of thousands over the years. Calyx stood motionless by the window, his back rigid with barely contained fury. The mate bond pulsed with his rage, hot and terrible and barely controlled. Arrest them, he said, his voice deadly calm. Both of them, tonight. Your Majesty, the advisor hesitated. Lord Vanthros commands significant loyalty among the Eastern nobles. If we move against him without... I said arrest them. The advisor bowed and fled. Mirren moved to Calix's side, taking his hand in hers. We'll get justice, she said softly, for all of them. He turned to face her, and she saw the weight of 10 years of failure in his eyes. I should have seen it, he said. I should have known. They were right under my nose the entire time, and You trusted the wrong people. Myron interrupted gently. That's not a flaw, Calix. That's being human. I'm not supposed to be human. His voice wavered. I'm supposed to be a king. My people died because I couldn't see what was in front of me. She cupped his face in her hands, forcing him to meet her eyes. Your people are still dying, she said. But not for much longer. We know the truth now. We can stop this. For a long moment he simply looked at her. Then he pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. What did I do to deserve you? He murmured. You searched for 3 years, she reminded him. You never gave up. You found me when no one else was looking. His arms tightened around her. I love you, he said quietly. I know I should have said it before, but I was afraid. Afraid that saying it would make it real, and real things can be lost. Mirren's heart soared. I love you too, she whispered back, and you're not going to lose me, I promise. The words had barely left her mouth when the door burst open. One of the guards stumbled in, blood streaming from a gash on his forehead. Your Majesties, he gasped, Lady Ravenna has escaped. She's taken the Queen's maid as hostage. Thessaly. Ice flooded Mirren's veins. Where? Calix demanded. The old temple in the Blighted Lands, she left a message. The guard held out a crumpled piece of parchment. She says if the Queen doesn't come alone, the maid dies, and she'll release the corruption's true source. Calix snatched the note, his face going pale as he read. It's a trap, he said. An obvious trap. She has Thessaly. Mirren's voice shook. Thessaly has been nothing but kind to me. I can't let her die because of me. And I can't let you walk into Ravenna's hands. Then come with me. She gripped his arm. We go together, like we planned. We face the source. We stop Ravenna. And we end this. Calix's jaw clenched. His terror warred with his determination through their connection. His desperate need to protect her battled against his knowledge that she was right. Together, he finally said. But we bring soldiers. Ravenna doesn't get to dictate terms. They rode out within the hour. The Blighted Lands were worse than Mirren had imagined. The corruption had twisted everything. Trees grew at impossible angles, their bark black and weeping. The ground itself seemed to pulse with dark veins, the same veins she had seen spreading through the sick children. The air smelled of decay and something older, something wrong in a way that made her wolf howl with instinctive fear. The source is close, Calix said, his amber eyes scanning the twisted landscape. I can feel it. Mirren felt it too, a pull in her chest, like something calling to the moonlight inside her, drawing her forward. They found the temple at the heart of the corruption. It had been beautiful once, ancient stones carved with symbols of the moon, archways reaching toward the sky. But the blight had consumed it. The stones were black now, crumbling. The carvings had been erased by creeping darkness. And standing at the entrance, Ravenna waited. She held a knife to Thessaly's throat, her green eyes wild with triumph. You came, she said. How touching. The worthless exile risking everything for a blind servant? Let her go, Mirren said, fighting to keep her voice steady. This is between us. Oh, it's so much bigger than us. Ravenna laughed, the sound echoing off the corrupted stones. Do you know what this temple is? What it was built for? Enlighten me. It was built to contain something. Ravenna's smile widened. Something my ancestors captured centuries ago. A creature of pure corruption, bound beneath these stones by ancient magic. She gestured at the darkness pulsing through the ground. My family has been feeding it ever since, keeping it alive, keeping it growing. Horror washed over Mirren. Why? She breathed. Because when the creature is strong enough, it will break free, and whoever releases it will control it. Ravenna's eyes burned with fanatical light. I was going to be queen. I was going to rule Astravar with that power at my command. But then, you came along. You worthless, hollow nothing, and ruined everything. So this is revenge? Kalix stepped forward, his soldiers flanking him. You would destroy your own kingdom because you couldn't have the crown. This kingdom was never mine. Ravenna's voice turned bitter. My family built it. My ancestors sacrificed everything for it. And then your bloodline swooped in and took the throne, leaving us to grovel at your feet for scraps. She pressed the knife tighter against Thessaly's throat. No more. Tonight the old blood rises. Tonight I take what was always owed to me. She slammed her hand against the temple wall. The ground shook. Cracks split the stone floor, spreading outward in jagged lines. Black light erupted from below, so dark it seemed to swallow the moonlight. And from the depths, something began to rise. It was massive, formless, a writhing mass of corruption and shadow that filled the temple and spilled outward like a tide. Eyes appeared within the darkness, hundreds of them, all fixed on Mirren with hungry recognition. The Moonborn! The creature hissed, its voice coming from everywhere and nowhere. I have waited so long to taste your light. Run! Kalix shouted, grabbing Mirren's arm. But she couldn't run. The creature's presence pinned her in place, pressing against her mind like a physical weight. The moonlight inside her flared in response, bright and desperate. And then the creature struck. Pain. Blinding, overwhelming pain. Mirren felt the corruption slam into her chest like a fist, forcing its way past her defenses. It was cold and wrong and hungry, seeking the light inside her with mindless desperation. She screamed, Mirren! Kalix's voice, distant and frantic. Mirren, fight it! She was trying. Gods, she was trying. But the creature was too strong, too ancient. It had been growing for centuries, feeding on the life force of an entire kingdom. And she was just one woman. One worthless, hollow, broken woman. No. The thought cut through the darkness like a blade. She was not worthless. She was not hollow. She was not broken. She was Moonborn. Mirren reached deep inside herself, past the fear and the pain, to the place where her wolf waited. Her wolf, who had slumbered for 23 years. Her wolf, who had finally awakened when she found her mate. Her wolf, who was not afraid. The transformation ripped through her. She had never shifted before, had believed she never could. But now her body twisted and reshaped itself, bones cracking and reforming, skin giving way to fur the color of fresh snow. When it was over, she stood on 4 legs, larger than any wolf she had ever seen, and her fur glowed with pure moonlight. The creature recoiled. Impossible, it hissed. You were hollow, empty. How do you have this power? Understanding flooded through Mirren. That was why she had never shifted. That was why her wolf had been silent for so long. She hadn't been defective. She had been waiting. The hollow space inside her, the emptiness everyone had mocked and pitied, had been a vessel. A container meant to hold something vast and ancient and powerful. The light of the moon itself. I was never empty, she said, her voice resonating with power. I was making room. She lunged. Light erupted from her body as she collided with the creature, burning through the corruption like fire through dry paper. The creature screamed, a sound that shook the temple to its foundations. But it wasn't enough. The creature was too large, too entrenched. For every shadow she burned away, more rose to take its place. Mirren! Kalix was suddenly beside her, his own wolf form massive and golden. His strength flowed into her through their bond. Take what you need. Everything I have is yours. She drew on their connection, pulling his energy into the light. It still wasn't enough. The creature laughed, a horrible wet sound. You cannot destroy me, it gloated. I am fed by suffering, by despair, by every life that has been lost to the blight. You would have to purify the entire kingdom to— It stopped. Understanding dawned in its countless eyes. No, it whispered, you wouldn't. The cost would be worth it. Mirren closed her eyes. The prophecy had spoken of sacrifice. Something precious. Something vital. Now she understood. To purify the source of corruption, she would have to give up everything the corruption fed on. Every drop of suffering. Every moment of despair. Every memory of being worthless and unwanted and alone. She would have to let go of her pain. All of it. The fear of abandonment. The shame of being different. The years of cruelty and rejection and silent tears. It had shaped her, defined her, become so much a part of her that she didn't know who she was without it. But she knew who she wanted to be. She wanted to be someone who healed instead of hurt. Someone who gave instead of took. Someone who loved without fear. I forgive them, she whispered. The words were harder than any battle. I forgive my mother for leaving. I forgive Corvain for casting me out. I forgive everyone who called me worthless and hollow and broken. The light grew brighter. I forgive myself for believing them. The creature screamed as the moonlight blazed like a sun. No, stop. You cannot. I release it all, Mirren said, and tears streamed down her wolf's face. Every wound, every scar, every moment of darkness. The light exploded outward. It swept across the temple, burning away the corruption like morning burning away mist. It spread beyond the walls, racing across the blighted lands, touching every twisted tree and poisoned stream. Wherever it passed, the darkness died. And deep in the earth, bound by chains of moonlight, the ancient creature of corruption finally, permanently, died with it. Mirren woke in human form, cradled in Calix's arms. The temple was gone. The corruption was gone. Around them, the land had begun to heal, green shoots already pushing through the cleansed soil. You did it, Calix breathed, his face wet with tears. You saved us all. She tried to speak, but her voice wouldn't come. The sacrifice had been real. She could feel the hollow spaces inside her, where the pain used to live. For so long, that pain had been her companion, her constant, her dark familiar. Now it was gone, and she didn't know how to be herself without it. Mirren. Calix's hand cupped her face. Stay with me, please. I don't. She swallowed hard. I don't know who I am now, without the hurt, without the wounds. Then we'll figure it out together. His forehead pressed against hers. You are still you, still stubborn and brave and impossibly kind. The pain was never what made you special, Mirren. You were special despite it, because you survived it and stayed soft when the world tried to make you hard. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. I love you, she whispered. I love you more. He kissed her gently. Now let's go home. But the night wasn't over. They found Ravenna where the creature had dropped her. Unconscious but alive, Thessaly sat nearby, shaken but unharmed, the knife that had threatened her throat lying discarded on the ground. What do we do with her? One of the soldiers asked, gesturing at Ravenna's prone form. Calix's expression hardened. She murdered thousands, he said. She will face justice. Wait. Mirren placed a hand on his arm. Before we take her back, I need to understand something. She knelt beside Ravenna, who was beginning to stir. Why? Mirren asked quietly. Why help Corvain? Why send him to find me? Ravenna's green eyes fluttered open, even defeated, even broken. Hatred still burned in their depths. Because I knew what you were before anyone else, she spat. My family has been searching for the Moonborn for generations. When my seers found you in Velmoran, I couldn't get to you in time. Corvain had already claimed you. Her lips twisted. So I made sure he'd throw you away. I sent agents to his court, paid them to whisper about your defects. I introduced him to Solène through intermediaries, knowing she would appeal to his vanity, made him believe you were worthless. The truth hit Mirren like a physical blow. You orchestrated everything, she breathed. My exile, All of it. And then you still ended up with Calyx. Ravenna's laugh was bitter. Everything I did, every plan I made, and you still won. I didn't win anything. Mirren stood slowly. I survived. That's not winning. That's just refusing to die. She turned to Calyx. Take her back for trial, she said. Let the people she hurt decide her fate. Ravenna screamed curses as the soldiers dragged her away, but Mirren didn't look back. She was done looking back. The trial lasted 3 days. Witness after witness came forward. Survivors of blighted villages, families who had lost everything, children who had been orphaned by the corruption that Ravenna and her father had deliberately spread. Lord Vanthros broke on the second day, confessing everything in exchange for mercy. There was no mercy. The council sentenced him to death. Ravenna, as the architect of the scheme, received the same sentence. Mirren watched the executions from the castle balcony, Calyx's hand clasped in hers. Is it wrong that I feel nothing? She asked quietly. I should feel satisfied, vindicated. But I just feel empty. Not empty, Calyx corrected gently. At peace. There's a difference. Maybe he was right. The crowds dispersed below. Life in Astravar would return to normal or something close to it. The blight was gone. The threat was ended. Healing could finally begin. There's something else, Calyx said carefully. News from Velmoran. Mirren tensed. Corvain? He's been overthrown. Calyx's voice was neutral, but she sensed his satisfaction through their link. When word spread that his former betrothed had saved Astravar while he sat on his throne doing nothing, his nobles revolted. Soleni fled. Corvain has been imprisoned pending trial for the abuses of his reign. For a long moment, Mirren simply stood there, processing. The man who had called her worthless. The man who had cast her out like garbage. The man who had tried to reclaim her as a weapon. He was gone. I thought I would feel more, she admitted. Triumph, maybe, or vindication. But I just feel relieved. That's because you've moved on. Calyx pulled her close. He doesn't have power over you anymore. He's just a man who made the worst mistake of his life. What will happen to Velmoran? The nobles have requested a meeting. They want to discuss unification. He paused. Under our rule. Mirren stared at him. They want us to rule both kingdoms? They want you. His smile was proud. The Moonborn who healed the blight. The hollow wolf who turned out to be the most powerful creature in a generation. They've heard the stories, Mirren. About how you were cast out and still chose to save everyone. About how you forgave the people who hurt you. Her head was spinning. I can't rule 2 kingdoms. I was in exile 3 months ago. I don't know anything about politics or diplomacy or… You know how to survive, Calyx interrupted. You know how to hope when everything seems lost. You know how to see the worth in people that others overlook. He cupped her face. Those are the only qualifications that matter. You really believe that? I really believe in you. Mirren looked out over the city that had become her home. The city she had saved. The people who had once stared at her with suspicion now waved and cheered whenever she passed. She thought of the little silver-eyed girl running healthy and happy through the gardens. She thought of Thessaly, who had risked her life simply because Mirren had shown her kindness. She thought of all the times she had believed she was worthless, and all the evidence that had proven her wrong. Okay, she said quietly. Calyx blinked. Okay? I'll do it. We'll do it. Together. She turned to face him. But I have conditions. His lips quirked. Of course you do. First, we continue the Academy for Young Witches. Magic should be nurtured, not feared. Agreed? Second, no more mating auctions. No more treating wolves as property. Absolutely agreed. Third, she hesitated. Third, we never forget where we came from. Both of us. The second son who was told he was unnecessary. The hollow wolf who was called worthless. Her voice dropped. We use that memory to make sure no one else ever feels that way. Calyx's eyes softened. That, he said quietly. is why you'll be the greatest queen this continent has ever seen." He kissed her then, deep and thorough, while the afternoon sun bathed them in warmth. And somewhere in the depths of Mirren's chest, where the pain used to live, something new had taken root. Not emptiness, not hollowness, love. 1 year later, the twin kingdoms of Astravar and Velmoran had never been more prosperous. The blight was a memory. The land had fully healed, yielding harvests richer than any in recorded history. Villages that had been abandoned for years were being rebuilt, filled with families who had finally found hope. And at the center of it all, Queen Mirren sat on her throne, her hand resting on the swell of her pregnant belly. "The ambassador from the Eastern Isles is requesting an audience," her advisor announced. "Send him in." The work of ruling never ended. Treaties to negotiate, disputes to settle, alliances to forge. But Mirren had discovered something surprising about herself. She was good at it. All those years of watching, of being overlooked, had taught her to see things others missed. She noticed when someone was lying. She understood the unspoken currents beneath polite conversation. She could find common ground between enemies because she knew what it felt like to be both. The ambassador entered, bowing low. "Your Majesty," he said, "the Eastern Isles bring gifts and good wishes for your growing family. Please rise." Mirren gestured to a chair. "And tell me what your people truly need." The ambassador's eyes widened slightly. He had expected formality, empty pleasantries, but Mirren had no patience for games. By the time the meeting ended, they had negotiated a trade agreement that benefited both kingdoms and established the framework for a lasting alliance. "Impressive," Calix said from the doorway after the ambassador left. Mirren smiled tiredly. "I learned from the best." He crossed to her throne, kneeling beside it so their eyes were level. "How are you feeling?" "Exhausted, hungry, enormous." She laughed, but happy. His hand joined hers on her belly. The baby kicked in response, and Calix's face lit up with wonder. "Still strange?" she asked. "Feeling them through the bond?" "Strange and wonderful." He pressed a kiss to her stomach. "I can't wait to meet them." "Them?" He looked up, amber eyes dancing. "The healer confirmed it this morning. Twins." Mirren's heart stopped. "Twins," she repeated faintly. "Two babies? A boy and a girl, if the healer's intuition is correct?" His smile was radiant. "One with your silver eyes, she thinks. One with mine." Tears spilled down Mirren's cheeks. A year ago, she had been dying alone in the borderlands, believing she would never be loved, never be wanted, never have a family of her own. Now she had everything. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you more." He rose, pulling her gently to her feet. "Come. You've worked enough for one day. The kingdom can survive without you for an afternoon." "Can it?" "It managed for centuries before you arrived. Poorly, but it managed." She laughed, letting him lead her through the castle. They ended up in the garden, the same garden where he had first told her he was falling for her. The roses were in full bloom, filling the air with sweetness. Calix spread a blanket on the grass, and they lay together watching the clouds drift overhead. "Do you ever think about how different things could have been?" Mirren asked quietly. "If you hadn't found me, if Corvain's soldiers had gotten there first?" "Sometimes," he admitted. "But then I remember something." "What?" "That the prophecy wasn't about finding you." He turned his head to look at her. "It was about you finding yourself. The Moonborn's power doesn't come from the moon, Mirren. It comes from within. From the strength to keep hoping when everything seems lost. From the courage to love when you've been hurt. From the choice to heal instead of hurt." He sat up, taking her hand. "You would have found that power eventually, with or without me. You would have saved yourself, because that's who you are." His voice dropped. "I'm just grateful I get to be beside you while you do it." Mirren sat up too, cupping his face in her hands. "You're wrong about one thing," she said softly. "What's that?" "I couldn't have done any of it without you." She kissed him gently. You believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. You saw value in me when I thought I had none. You gave me a choice when everyone else just took. Her forehead pressed against his. You saved me, Calyx, and I will spend the rest of my life being grateful for that. They stayed in the garden until sunset, wrapped in each other's arms, watching the sky turn gold and pink and purple. Two people who had been told they were nothing. Two people who had found everything in each other. And high above, the moon rose full and bright, bathing them in silver light. It almost seemed to be smiling. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed it and want to hear more stories like this, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Let me know in the comments what you thought. Did you expect the twists? Who was your favorite character? What kind of story would you like to hear next? Your comments mean more to me than you know, and I read every single one. Until next time, remember, you are never as worthless as others make you feel. Sometimes the hollow spaces inside us are just making room for something extraordinary.